All right, we are here on the big porch of the Grand Hotel here at the Mackinac Policy Conference, and I'm joined here with the one and only Mr. Dennis Archer.
Right.
What's going on, sir?
I'm good, man. I got to tell you, you mentioned this earlier. The weather here has just been amazing. So in addition to phenomenal programming, record attendance, record performance for the conference as a business for the chamber, the weather just takes it over the top. I mean, I can't remember us having 3 or 4 days of perfect weather.
The weather will be the highlight of this year's conference for sure. It's good to see you here this morning.
Of course.
Your big party last night.
Yeah. Cut it short so I can make sure I'd be awake for you.
Right. What would be some of the biggest takeaways you would find from this year's conference?
I think for me at least, as it relates to the conversations on the main stage that I enjoy, as an entrepreneur, you couldn't help but to love Mark Cuban.
Right.
You see him on TV and his personality and his persona that plays out his true self on stage. It's just the same. And you may recall in 2016, when I was chair of the conference, we had his partner, Damon John.
Yeah, Damon John, right.
Who was on stage. And so to now have Mark, it was a great juxtaposition to have those two different personalities. And very timely.
He says that he
was basketball experience.
Yeah.
Really giving his history of an entrepreneur, being fired from a job and really being motivated to do better. It's a great story.
He said, he doesn't mind being called woke.
No.
Completely embracing that diversity, equity, inclusion is good for the bottom line.
Yeah, what I found interesting about him, he's like, I've been doing this my whole career.
Yeah.
All this stuff with the DEI and making sure that people have an opportunity. His comment basically was, it's good for business. I've been doing it all along. And call me what you will, but I just think it's the right thing to do for my business.
Yeah. As we move forward, the topic or theme around this year was about the power of and.
Yeah.
Which is a contrast to the either or concept, but really putting the focus behind, we can do this and we can do this. How's that resonating?
I mean, I think to your point, it's very timely. If you look at the prior presidency, it was very much an or presidency, and then that cascaded down throughout the country and had us be still, I think, more polarized than we have been since the pre-1960s. And so I think the concept of so I applaud the chamber and the conference chair, Matt Elliott from Bank of America, for coming up with the power of and. I mean, you see people with the pen with the ampersand on it, and I think everybody has embraced it. I think we're tired of the polarization. We're tired of racial divide and the inequities that come along with that. And so and what I've also enjoyed is fairly organically throughout all of the sessions on stage I've seen, that power of and has come out. It hasn't been forced. It didn't seem planned. But just because we're talking about collaboration in general, that lends itself to the theme.
Yeah. Moving forward, what do you think, or how do you think this conference continues to try to involve more of Detroit, if you will? Because at some point, some years ago, there was this narrative of how there was somehow a disconnect between what happens here and then how does that boil down to Main Street?
Well, it's an interesting question. Couple things.
It has changed.
First, I would just note that this is the Mackinac Policy Conference. The Detroit Regional Chamber represents an 11-county region in southeastern Michigan.
Yeah.
And that's just a matter of practice on a day-to-day basis. And then with this conference, we actually try to be statewide in our focus. Detroit, I feel, is always central to that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we started several years ago at the conference is we come up with a to-do list, which Sandy and the governor will announce later today, along with Matt Elliott. And then against that to-do list, we will measure. And so we will measure throughout the year, and we will report on that when we come back in the beginning of the conference next year. So we are actually taking, and I don't know if you saw Matt Elliott's welcome, but he got up there and he said, every meeting of mine ends with, And all the B of A people in the crowd said
Yeah,
homework,
homework.
because that's a big deal to
Yeah.
him. He wants to have measurables. He believes in metrics. And so he wants to have a conference that yields results, not just a lot of conversation. So I think that'll happen. And secondly, we also for the past several years have had a Detroit policy conference, which you guys have so graciously covered. And that is about all things Detroit. And so that'll be coming up soon. There'll be announcements about who will participate in that. But I feel this conference, I saw Suzanne Shank on stage. I've seen Ryan Hall Jr. on stage. A lot of Detroiters, Kenneth Kelly from First Independence Bank has been on stage. There's been a lot of black folks on stage. There's been a lot of discussion about Detroit. I think Mayor Duggan did an excellent job. I think pleased a lot of people when he announced reduction in property tax for homeowners in Detroit.
That's what I wanted to ask you next, because as an entrepreneur, there is this idea or this plan by Mike Duggan that, where do you hear often that cities are going to reduce property taxes?
Well, I think in order, we talk about being competitive.
Yeah.
And a lot of the discussions that we've had up here about, what are the things that will attract people to live in the city, for businesses to move to the city and have their employees consider living in the city. Yeah, education.
Yeah.
Home ownership. Safety. And when you look at the chart that he put up with where we are compared to Troy and Ann Arbor and some of the other surrounding suburbs, we are by far at the top. And so if his plan executes to the extent he's suggesting, we'll be middle of the pack, which is fair. He was very clear to say that, hey, some businesses, your property taxes are going to go up. He made it very clear to me about a week and a half ago. We had a discussion. He says, hey, I'm going to be making this announcement, but, some of your properties, and he named one in general, you're going to pay more taxes. But as someone who's very concerned about the city and the greater good, I get the benefit of my home taxes in my house. I live in Detroit going down. My properties, I may pay a little more, but if it's for the better good of the city, I can live with that.
It's a balance.
It is a balance.
Yeah. Dennis Archer, it's always a pleasure talking with you.
My man.
You have one of the best events and parties in town.
Thank you. Stay tuned.
As well as great business, man. Thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Here on the porch at the Grin.
My man.